This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
Welcome back to the X-Zone, everyone. My name is Rob McConnell, coming to you from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talk Star Radio Network, Star Cable, and the X-Zone Broadcast Network. Toll-free worldwide, 1-800-610-7035. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our website, www.xzoneradiotv.com. We're going to be talking about history's mysteries this hour. My special guest is Brian Houghtons, and Brian is author and researcher on the subjects of historic megalithic sites, ancient sacred places, and supernatural folklore. The first of his 4 books, Hidden History, Lost Civilizations, Secret Knowledge, and Ancient Mysteries, has been translated into 9 languages. Brian long ago fell from the lure of the ancient world and tales of the supernatural, initially inspired by visiting the Neolithic chambered tombs of the Cotswold Hills in England. He currently lives in Greece, where we're talking to him now live from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Brian, welcome to the X-Zone. Congratulations on a great book.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.
Brian, tell us a little bit about the inspiration behind writing history's mysteries.
Well, really the main inspiration are the new archaeological discoveries which are being made every day across the world. People are finding things on a daily basis, interesting things, and even places like Stonehenge that we thought we knew everything about. Recently, a few months ago, the excavators found another stone circle about half a mile away from Stonehenge, and then a few months later they found that Stonehenge at one stage had been surrounded by a hedge, so you wouldn't actually have been able to see it from outside. And it's stuff like this that gets me interested, because I think these ancient places are constantly throwing up new meanings, new information, and we're learning all the time. There's no final theories about most of them, I think.
When we come back, Brian, we're going to be talking about your book, History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. So I look forward to sharing the next hour with you here in the X-Zone, www.brian-houghton.com. His website will be on our podcast site. All you'll be able to do is click there. It'll bring you right to either Brian's podcast of tonight's show or his website. It's that simple here at the X-Zone. And I'll be back talking more about history's mysteries. I love these kind of historical shows where we actually go back in time, because I believe the answers of today and where we'll be tomorrow are actually back in the sands of time. 1-800-610-7035, toll-free worldwide. Email xzone@xzoneradiotv.com. On MSN Messenger, xzoneradiotv@hotmail.com. And our websites, www.xzoneradiotv.com. That is for the X-Zone Radio TV show. For Paragators, www.paragators.org. And our store, www.xzonestore.com. Great merchandise. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. We're going to give the entire X-Zone Nation something to talk about this hour. We're speaking with Brian Houghtons, and we're talking to Brian. He's in Greece. We're in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. He's the author of History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. His website is www.brian-houghton.com. And Brian, with all these new discoveries that are happening, as you said, on a daily basis, how is this going to change our perception of history, and how will this affect our future?
I think one of the main ways is the way that new discoveries are being examined by science. I guess the best example would be DNA analysis. And, for example, I know they did an experiment in ex-Phoenician colonies in Europe, places like Malta and North Africa, and they did DNA analysis on the inhabitants of these ex-Phoenician colonies well over 2,000 years after the Phoenicians had left. And they found that there were still traces of their DNA in the local population. So basically after 2,000 years, you still had the remnants of the Phoenician colonies physically existing. The DNA was still there, present. So I think it shows that we can actually, even with the material we've got, because of new investigative techniques like DNA studies, we can actually get more material from what we already have, never mind what we're finding on a daily basis. So I think that the possibilities really are endless for what we can find out about the past now, really.
We were talking very briefly about Stonehenge, and I don't think there's a person on this planet who has access to the internet, television, or radio who does not know what Stonehenge is. But what have the recent discoveries told archaeologists, scientists, and historians like yourself about Stonehenge and its use and what it really was?
I think one of the main things that those discoveries have shown is that its use changed over time. I mean, it was fully functional for 1600 years, and it certainly began before the stones were there as a series of pits which contained burials, cremations, and there were hundreds of burials found there. Then the first stones, the lower stones, were set up, and it had some ritual significance. And when the larger stones were put in place, it became attached to the sunrise, sunset, the solstices. And during this period, it was rebuilt so many times, the plan is very confusing. But I think that it was always some kind of center of the dead, and I think that it doesn't stand alone. It stands in an area of many, many archaeological sites, which I think it was connected with. So we have theories of the dead were transported from another site a couple of miles away and laid to rest in Stonehenge, not necessarily buried there, and that it functioned as some kind of temple. And this discovery of the hedge surrounding it later in its life would suggest that it was, at one stage, only the elite would be able to go inside or even see inside. So I think that with Stonehenge, it was always changing as the population, as the culture probably changed. It was seen in a different way throughout its 1,500 years of existence.
It would seem, Brian, that throughout the history of humans, there has been a fascination with death and what, if anything, survives death. As an archaeologist, historian, and scientist, have you found this throughout your studies?
Yes, I think so. I think, and one reason for this is that temples, monuments for the dead, tend to have been built in stone, whereas houses were built of wood, straw, things like this. So what survives are the monuments. It's a bit like very elaborate churches being built, but while the poor still live in badly constructed wooden houses. I think it was similar then. So what we have left is perhaps not a very accurate representation of what once existed, but certainly the stone monuments, you can't escape. They were always to do with death and burial and what happened at the afterlife, from Egypt to England to Greece to the States. I think you can't avoid it. I think much like today, the ancients were fascinated by what exactly happened, and they tried to explain it in their monuments, using their monuments of stone.
I would imagine that one of the most recent monuments to death in stone would be the Taj Mahal, because that is exactly what it is, isn't it? It's a monument to a lady who died.
It is. It's a monument, as you say, a rather recent monument. It was built in the 1650s, and it was actually built by some of the best architects in India. It was very well organized, and it was built for the Emperor Shah Jahan's wife. Her name was Mumtaz Mahal, which is where you get the name Taj Mahal. And there was a lot of folklore and myth about how all the workmen who saw it was so glorious that their eyes had to be gouged out so they wouldn't see anything better, and things like that, and the amount of marble and semi-precious stone which was built into it. But it is a huge monument to death, and the tombs of the emperor and his wife are located inside the structure.
And then, of course, we see the same types of monuments to death in Egypt, in the pyramids. Where else around the world have you found, or other archaeologists and historians found, these unbelievable tributes to death?
I guess you have them. You have the many chambered tombs in Europe, the megalithic tombs of England, France, Ireland, Germany, and Central Europe as well, where again, well over 5,000 years old, and which were built not as graves as such, because I don't think the same thing was going on. I think that these kind of chambered tombs were more like a mixture between a tomb and a temple, and some kind of rituals seem to have gone on in the forecourts of these tombs. There are traces of ancient fires and pieces of bone, etc. So I think they had a completely different outlook on death, where the bodies were placed inside the tombs, and perhaps they were taken out later, and another ritual performed. The tomb was closed, then opened again. I think it wasn't as final, perhaps, as death is seen as now. I think it was more of a continuous journey then, and I don't think tomb is the right word to describe a lot of not only the pyramids, but the Neolithic, megalithic structures in Europe and in the Near East as well. So I think they had many functions. Temple tombs, I guess, would be the best way to describe them.
Have you seen any common threads between all of these temples around the world?
No, not the only common thing, I guess, is the human need to look for something beyond death and the limits of working in stone. So most temples are going to have, most tombs are going to have a similar shape, a similar structure. If you need a passageway and you need chambers to put the bodies in, megalithic tombs are going to be pretty much the same from India to Ireland, I think. So there are similarities, but I think they come from similar needs and similar materials that the people were working with.
How accurate is the history that we know now, with all the changes that have been, or with all the discoveries over the past 20, 30 years? When we look back in history, are we seeing the real history, or are we seeing the history as it was known at that time? But there have been so many changes because of the recent discoveries.
Yeah.
How do you...
Sorry.
No, go right ahead, sir.
I think what recent discoveries are doing, and the internet also, is making, because it's so slow to get a book published compared to putting stuff on the internet, a lot of books are becoming out of date very, very quickly. So if you want to know about these latest discoveries at Stonehenge, you're not going to read about them in the book for a few years, but they're on the website straight away. So I think that even by the time publications catch up, there'll be more new things. So I think the internet can help keeping us up to date with exactly what's going on with ancient sites, ancient structures. But as is the case in Egypt, they have too much already excavated to store and examine, and it's not worth them carrying out too many more excavations because they just have nowhere to put it and they don't have the money to preserve it. So I think we'll probably have more research on what we already have in the future rather than trying to dig around and find more stuff.
Brian, please stand by. You and I have to take our news break at the bottom of the hour. X-Zone Nation, Brian Houghtons is our special guest. He's the author of a book that I found very interesting, and it's one of these books that you pick it up, you're going to read it with a cup of coffee, and 6 cups of coffee is later, and you're halfway through the book. It's a great book. It's got some super pictures in it. Gives you a lot of food for thought. www.brian-houghton.com. The name of his book is History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. And once again, his website is www.brian-houghton.com. Brian and I return on the other side of this commercial break after the news as the X-Zone continues from our studios in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, on the Talkstar Radio Network, X-Zone Broadcast Network, and Star Cable. Whatever you do, don't go away. You know why? Because we're going to be back right after this news break.
This is the X-Zone Broadcast Network, broadcasting worldwide on broadcast affiliates and satellite program providers, including CNN Broadcast Network, Sirius Satellite Network, Star Media, Good News Radio Network, Angel Broadcast Network, Wiki Broadcast Network, and WPBN TV. For more information on the X-Zone Broadcast Network, visit us at www.xzbn.net.
X-Zone Nation, my guest this hour is Brian Houghton. His website is www.brian-houghton.com. That's BRIAN HAUGHTON. He's the author of History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. Some of the chapters, X-Zone Nation, include, let me see, chapter, for example, chapter 4 is the Capes of Union in Greece, and then Solomon's Temple, and let me see, he also covers the Great Zimbabwe in South Africa. And then it's there, that was under the mysterious places, and then you go to unexplained artifacts, and then enigmatic people. I have to ask you this, Brian, about Merlin the Magician.
Okay. Well, I wrote about, in my first book, I wrote about King Arthur, and I just felt that Merlin was just almost as interesting because he's one of those semi-mythical, semi-real people that I guess mainly because of stuff like the Harry Potter films and that, it's kind of people see as totally fictional, but I think Merlin was partly based on historical 4th century AD figure in England. But he kind of mixed together with the typical wizard, the archetypal wizard, magician. And I was just fascinated by the combination of these two things in Dark Age Britain, when there's not too much information archaeologically or from text.
Now,
So yeah, King Arthur's Merlin is a fascinating figure.
so was Merlin really a magician? What, was he in the court of King Arthur? And the stories that we've heard about King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table and Merlin, the taking the sword out of the stone, was this all true, or is it myth and truth combined to make folklore?
It is a combination of myth and truth, and I think Merlin is really a combination of about three different characters in one. One of these was certainly probably Scottish kind of wild man of the woods who made prophecies and things like this and lived in the woods. There was certainly a 4th century war leader who may have been based partly on Merlin, and there are Welsh Celtic poems of the 4th, 5th, 6th century that mention a Merlin as a kind of advisor to the king who gave prophecies, etc. So I think we don't have a single historical person. We have a combination of 3 or 4 different characters from that time. I think things like the sword in the stone were added later by French Romance writers, 12th, 13th century, and I don't think there's too much truth in those. They were kind of just the embroidery around the story that already existed, but as was the Round Table, I think. But it's not too far-fetched to imagine an advisor to the king who supposedly had supernatural powers.
What can you tell me about the mound builders in the United States?
Sorry, I didn't hear that.
I'm sorry, the mound builders here in the United States. There are mounds. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Again, we're talking a bit more recent now. So what you have in North America, anyway, I think right across the country from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico are a series of various shapes, sizes of mounds, the earliest of which goes back to around 3000 BC, and the most recent, I think, was still being built in the 16th century when the Spanish arrived. And the mystery is, I think, about the mounds across the states are that some of them contain burials, some of them contain nothing, some are in the shape of animals, insects, etc. Some of them seem to be aligned as constellations, some of them not. And I think they reflect really the many different Native American tribes who built them. And I think that, again, there's not one explanation, there's not one function that every single mound had. And that, I mean, the size of them tells you that some are like 100 feet high, some are 20 feet high. So I think the area which they cover is so vast, and the different Native American tribes who built them so varied, that I think there are bound to be differences amongst the way they were used, how they were built. So they're the mounds, really.
Is there any proof or any sign in any of the archaeological evidence that you or other archaeologists have discovered around the world of visitors from other planets?
No.
Now, if there would have been visitations from other planets, extraterrestrials, aliens, would they not have been depicted in the great archaeological finds that we've discovered around the world?
I don't know. I've never thought about it, to be honest.
Would you say that, based on history and archaeology, that our fascination with visitors from another planet are very recent?
I think the fascination with visitors in spaceships landing here is very recent, but I think the fascination with kind of more spiritual beings from the stars is probably a very ancient concept. what we've done, I think, in the past few decades is try to insist it's a physical reality with physical machines, probably reflecting the 20th and 21st century obsession with technology and machines. And I think we project that back into the ancient world and thinking, well, they must have been arriving then in machines as well. Which, well, besides there being no evidence for, I think it's whatever is depicted is usually a spiritual concept rather than any physical reality.
Over the years, and based on the archaeological evidence that has been found, Brian, has spirituality, has religion kept up with the progress and the evolution of humans?
I think that, first of all, I think religion has to come to terms with scientific discoveries. I don't think there can be disputing. I know Christianity was saying right up into the end of the 19th century that the world, according to the Bible, did not go further back than 4006 or 4004 or something like that. And then there were more archaeological discoveries showing that it was much, much further back and much, much further back. So I think that religion really has to work with science rather than be against it and sticking literally to the Bible, for example, in Christianity.
What was the most awe-inspiring find that you included in your book that I must say is one of the best books I've read on history's mysteries, and I love the titles, History's Mystery, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. What was the one that you included that said, wow, this is truly fascinating? I mean, they're all fascinating, but that one that really got you.
Well, I do like these strange golden hats, and I really didn't know much about them until I researched them. Mm-hmm. And they really, literally, they look like huge gold witches' hats. I mean, that's what they look like. And they may well have been this. The thing is, they date back, and they were found in Central Europe and Germany. There's about 4 or 5 finds. And they all date back to about 3,000 years. And they're very, very slightly built with gold foil in the shape of hats, or perhaps if turned upside down, some kind of libation vessel. And they've been found in various places, 19th, 20th century, none in archaeological excavations. And they have really no parallels anywhere else in the world. There are 4 or 5 of them, and they may have been wrapped around some kind of wizard or witch's hat. They may have been wrapped around a drinking vessel, but they only come from this part of Central Europe, and I think they are called in some literature witches' hats, and it is what they look like. They have symbols engraved onto them. But my curiosity is why there's none from anywhere else, and there's not really anything similar. And there's a black and white photo in my book which shows one, and they are very tall. They'd be difficult to wear as a hat. So. And I don't know whether they were just something that hasn't survived or something that a few local tribes made and they never caught on or something. But this is one thing that fascinates me, the gold witches' hats.
I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this question, Brian, so please, if this is outside of your field of expertise or you don't feel comfortable answering it, please just let me know. We're coming to December the 21st, 2012. People are looking at doom and gloom because people who have nothing better to do with their time, well, this is my own interpretation of it, are talking about the end of the world based on the Mayan calendar. And I was wondering if you, as an archaeologist, have any comment on that.
I haven't thought too much about this. All I have when I read about the Mayan calendar is that I interpret it I interpreted this date as the end of a cycle and the beginning of a new cycle. I didn't interpret it as the destruction of the world. What kind of cycle, I'm not sure, but I remember reading about the Mayan calendar and thinking, well, it surely is indicating the end of a certain cycle and the beginning of another cycle. Whether it's a different cycle, a more spiritual cycle or something like that, I'm not sure. But that was my interpretation of its kind of, I wouldn't say the end of the old order, but the end of a certain kind of lifestyle. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that was my interpretation.
I also look at it at, well, it's December. It's it's December the 31st. It's time to get rid of this year's calendar and put up the new one. How about Atlantis? Is there any archaeological evidence to substantiate the claims that, once again, many people believe about the tailed or the fabled continent of Atlantis?
Well, I think, again, it's a bit of a mixture. Plato wrote about Atlantis in the 4th century,
right,
360 BC, and as a kind of a moral tale. But I know that there's a site about 50 miles less, 40 miles away from here, called Helike, which was the victim of a terrible earthquake. There are still earthquakes in the area now. And it was a wealthy Greek city, a 4th century BC Greek city that was completely destroyed just roughly about the time of Plato, a bit later. And I think this may have been part of his inspiration.
Oh.
It's pretty close to, not too far from Athens, and I think it was literally wiped out. There's nothing there now at all. I go past it regularly, and it's just a flat plain by the sea.
Brian, stand by. You and I have to take our final break. We'll be right back. Wow. Brian Houghtons is our special guest. He's the author of History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time, www.brian-houghton.com. We'll be back on the other side of this break. Don't go away. Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi, you can still listen to the X-Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell, The Science of Magic with Gwilda Wiyaka, X-1, Dimension X, Space Patrol, and every minute of the X-Zone Broadcast Network by calling 213-401-0080, courtesy of Audio Now. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan, and it's free if you have unlimited minutes. Call 213-401-0080 to listen on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Remember, 213-401-0080 for the best of the paranormal, parapsychology, and sci-fi radio programming anywhere, 24/7, 365. Brian Houghtons is our special guest, X-Zone Nation. He is the author of a book that you will love to read. It's one of these books that will go on your library shelf, and you'll watch something on TV. You'll go get Brian's book down, and you'll say, "All right, okay, oh, that's right. That's what I thought he said." The name of the book is History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. His website is www.brian-houghton.com. That's BRIAN. Then there's a dash or a hyphen, whatever you want to call it, HAUGHTON.com. As always, Brian, great talking to you. With all the advances in technology, can you just give us a little bit of a taste or a little bit of an idea what archaeologists and scientists are looking forward at discovering in the near future?
I guess it's going to be something working with material they already have from sites, and hopefully, this is what I would like to see is if they could reconstruct, if they could get DNA from Neanderthals and reconstruct I don't mean literally build on, but reconstruct a Neanderthal, just to see what they look like. Really, it's
wouldn't that be great?
Simple thing, but yeah, because we keep getting told they were, like apes, they were more intelligent than us, less intelligent than us, various things. And I just think, I wonder how far off the technology is for us to be able to use DNA to reconstruct an entire Neanderthal.
Brian, what are you going to be up to next? What's your next project? And any more books coming out?
That's it for now for books. What I'm working on now is I've started to research it. It's not in stone yet. Is the conspiracy theories attached to the Manson family.
Ooh.
It's a bit of a debate. I've always been fascinated, and I think it's because they scare me so much. I wanted to look into it a bit. And there are a lot of really odd conspiracies that tie in with a lot of other things. There's all sorts of CIA plots and satanic cults and stuff like, Manson was a patsy, all this stuff. And there is so much that I think it's worth trying anyway to see if my publisher will accept an idea for a book about this.
Well, Brian, I hope that you keep us in mind if there's anything new that pops up in the world of archaeology that you'd like to get around the world. And I wish you continued success. And as a person who loves history as much as I do, thank you very much for this great work that you've put out called History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. And thank you very much for staying up this late all the way in Greece.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
It's been my great pleasure. Take care of yourself, Brian.
And you.
All right, Brian Houghton, X-Zone Nation, www.brian-houghton.com. That's www.brian-houghton.com. The name of his book, one more time, is History's Mysteries, People, Places, and Oddities Lost in the Sands of Time. You've got to love a book that is well-researched, well-written, and makes sense. And you can find all these three factors in History's Mysteries. I'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as the X-Zone continues. We're right here live and around the world on the Talkstar Radio Network, Star Cable, and X-Zone Broadcast